Hey, how's it going?
So I watched the show when it first came out, and I was 12 years old. So kind of maybe the perfect age to watch the show. I was its perfect intended audience. Arjun watched it a few years ago in college, and Kami.
Well, I guess it was like a decade. I watched it in Teen Titans back when I was like I think 18.
Okay, and Kami, you rewatched it very recent, or you watched it for the first time very
Yeah,
recently, right?
I didn't really have cable growing up actually. And so everyone around me was like, "Watch this like new American anime thing." And I'm just like, "What is Avatar?" While I was growing up and even in college, people were just like, "Oh, you haven't seen Avatar?" And I'm like, "No." So I finally got to watch it because of quarantine and everything, and I've been missing out. Honestly.
Oh,
I yeah.
all right. So what is for you then? What is your overall thoughts now that you finally watched it?
Um, I I think the series was really well done, honestly. And I guess like as a creative writer, that's not only because I didn't start out as an artist. I'm actually a writer, initially and primarily. I'm getting my MFA right now. So, but I write stories kind of like similar to Avatar, and um, just everything about it was really well done from a creative writer's perspective. And I think the episodes were really succinct in getting their point across each time. And there weren't that many filler episodes. But when there were filler episodes, I felt like they actually, fit in with the plot, not like what Naruto that's
Mm-hmm.
what 800 episodes long and has like 1,000 fillers. That doesn't the math doesn't work out like that. But I think it was, and I think what Avatar does really well is present these concepts to like kids, preteens, and stuff. Because you were 12 when you watched this, Fritz. Um, but they present concepts about life that are just still pretty relevant to just people growing up today. And they're presented in a way for young kids to understand really well, which I really appreciated.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I I can't decide whose journey I liked more. Like I think Zuko actually had, it's obvious Zuko had the best had the most growth throughout the series. And that was just really really nice to see, honestly. But yeah, those
I,
I
I,
just really like it.
Yeah, I would say before we can get into characters in a minute, but I just want to ask Arjun. So when you first watched it, what was your thoughts? Did it live up to the hype, or when you? Because I also grew up with Teen Titans as well, and at that time, it's something I want to point out is in the early mid 2000s there just weren't animated shows like that. There wasn't ones where there's actually a plot and characters you're supposed to be able to take seriously. It was before the glut of when the SJWs took over and created the glut of stuff like Steven Universe and Gravity Falls and all of that. But before then, it was like outside of stuff like SpongeBob, you had Avatar and Teen Titans, and I guess before that, Batman the Animated Series. But that was before our time. So
There was some other stuff like Justice League. I think. Well, it depends how you want to count it. I think during the 90s and early 2000s, there was a period where they were just willing to give pretty much anybody a chance to make an animated series. And just about every movie got its own animated series. Most of them only lasted for a season or so. But I
mhm.
guess you could almost call it like a resurgence or whatever when you had Teen Titans and Avatar, and then I forget when My Little Pony started.
I think that was like
Mm.
2010, 2011 when the big popular one.
The newest one.
Yeah,
I'm trying to remember when Friendship is Magic started. I feel like it was, yeah, that was 2010,
Yeah.
and that kind of became the only uh what like major animated show of that style on TV.
hmm
But yeah, I remember that being a really good a good time. Fritz, could you see?
Yeah,
if
I
you
did.
could
I
turn
just
me up a little?
I fixed
Okay.
it.
Okay.
I just thought you were a little too loud, but yeah, because I didn't mean it in a mean way, but yeah, afterwards, because you had Legend of Korra, which came out. I don't know if either of you have seen Korra, but
No.
I have not
it's
yet. I don't know if I should.
I hate it. I'm gonna
Okay.
be sure. I really. It was amazing when it first came out. Of like, oh, cool, like more Avatar, but it's set later, and it's like in this cool like 1920s jazz age like Shanghai type city. But then it shows how much, because in that the music, the voice acting is still just phenomenal. The and the animation is still really good, and like you get that nice crisp white, full HD widescreen, where the Blu-ray I have of the original show it's still like 1080, but it's still in the 4:3 aspect ratio, so it doesn't feel quite as up there yet, but it doesn't matter, because like the writing in Legend of Korra is just so much worse. And and then when
That's what I've heard.
they had to end it with like, and it was doing so badly that the last 2 seasons they didn't even air on TV. They only aired it on Nick.com, and they're like, well, we need somebody to talk about our show. Let's make the main character a lesbian for no reason.
Wasn't there no indication? I guess we can get more into Korra in a bit, but wasn't there no indication that she was a lesbian until the last episode?
Yes.
Didn't she flirt with the male characters?
She was boyfriends with the male one of the main male characters, who was just a much less likable, lesser version of Zuko, who has no personality, and the girl that she ends up with also had a crush on that same guy, and so then eventually they said, why not, we're just together now. And then apparently in the comics they made afterwards about Korra, it's like the most cringe thing you can imagine, because they go back and talk about how Fire Lord Ozai banned same-sex marriage.
What?
Okay, maybe let's take a step back. We can get to that in a minute.
But yeah.
So sorry, just to finish off. So I remember when I watched Avatar for the first time, I had seen one episode of it actually, and I think it was probably the worst episode when I was younger. It's the one where there's the two. I don't even know how to describe it, but there's the one where there's like the barbaric clan and like the really
the Great Divide. I remember this was like back in 2015 was the last time I rewatched it. And that was right before I started getting to Red Letter Media. I was still into Nostalgia Critic, and so I kind of watched all his stuff on it, and that was kind of cool, seeing another person getting into the show for the first time. And like he made like a video like his top 10 and top 10 worst episodes, and even he put that as the worst episode, because it's complete filler and there's not really any point to it.
Because that was the only episode I had seen when it was on YTV back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to. I thought that kind of represented it. When I started watching it, I really enjoyed it. And I just kind of feel after that they just kind of gave up on making Western animated stuff. Like the only thing of any decent quality they produced was probably My Little Pony, which, to be honest, was not bad for like the first 2 seasons.
I'm gonna be honest, I saw 8 episodes of My Little Pony, but because that was when I was first in college and I had a couple female friends that were bronies, but like, and so I watched it for the same reason I watched Doctor Who in high school. But I'm like, well, you know what, if I was an 8-year-old girl, I would love this. I don't like this because I am not an 8-year-old, but I don't bash people for liking, I guess, good writing in a cartoon. But on Avatar, because I don't want to talk about My Little Pony, again, looking back, because the past 2 times I rewatched it, I had the thought that, oh, is it going to be kind of a little cringe and not, like, hold up perfectly well? And no, every time I rewatch it, there's aspects of it that I appreciate even more. And again, it just shows how crucial the writing is, and the thing that brings it together and why it works, even compared to shows like Lost and Game of Thrones and other, like, animated or just TV series. And another huge reason why one of the reasons why the new Star Wars movies don't work it's because when Brian Knizko and Mike DiMartino created the show, they essentially had the idea of, we have our beginning, middle, and end. We have a direction of, we know where this is going to end and where the characters are going to end up, and so we're not gonna keep extending it for more seasons to get more views. We have our 3 seasons, 61 episodes, 1, 2, 3, we're done. And it makes it work on the level that it is like a Star Wars or Lord of the Rings in terms of a fantasy, world setting, and it has a story that it's succinct enough that it doesn't overstay its welcome, and you feel like almost every choice was made deliberately.
Well, another example of that is probably the show Babylon 5, where the 5 seasons were pretty much planned out from the beginning. So there isn't really any filler. I mean, there's episodes that don't focus on the main plot, but there's not really like a season that just kind of meanders or goes nowhere. That's, I think, kind of the issue a lot of animes have, is they're kind of faced with, and the Game of Thrones TV show also had this issue, when you're based on a different material that isn't finished, you have the issue where you either have to put in filler until the thing you're adapting catches up, or you have to just make something else up and make it completely different.
Mm-hmm.
And people generally get angry if you do that. And sometimes it's better, but it's normally worse.
It's why, like, I was into One Piece a lot, right? And that's another one where it's notorious for having huge amounts of filler of just several episodes of just people staring at each other. And again, I get why, but like, there's 2 different ways of doing filler, because they also had, earlier on in One Piece, they had filler episodes that was just, this isn't in the manga, we're just creating a new kind of filler storyline, which is better than just 50 episodes of recap. But again, to show how strong Avatar's writing is when they did their recap episode, they probably did it in the smartest way possible. Mm-hmm. Which is, it's the episode right before the finale, and it's the characters all go to see this play that's about all their adventures up to that point. And it's a really fun retrospective, and it kind of shows that there is a self-awareness of, like, people making fun of some of the characters' personalities, like Katara being this kind of crybaby that's always screaming about hope, and Zuko being angry all the time. And the best part being that they kind of, like how in the old Peter Pan play, they would have a woman play Peter Pan. They had a woman play Aang.
So that's actually interesting. I mean, like, Aang is kind of feminine in a lot of ways as well. Like, so.
Well, he's a kid.
Yeah, exactly. But so I mean, I like using a woman as like for Aang in that play kind of made sense to me. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But poor Aang,
mm-hmm.
he actually hated that. So,
mm-hmm.
I think my favorite bit of lampshading from that is when they're like, "Did Jet die?" It was kind of ambiguous.
You never got that cleared up.
Yeah, like you didn't get that as a kid, but they're like, okay, it's weird because like there's a couple points in the show where it's like they have to get around saying this character is dead, like when they're gonna return to Omashu and they're like, we're not even sure if King Bumi's still around. And it's weird because you don't know if it's because of Nick censoring, because they say death and dying plenty of times in the show, and there's stuff that's way darker, like in episode 3 when they come across Monk Gyatso's skeleton, like an actual just, disturbing looking skeleton. Which again is kind of it's not spoken, but the show deals with the idea of genocide, that Aang is the last of his entire culture.
I think the thing I struggle with is trying to just look at the original series as it was, like when it was made, because they've added just so much nonsense with Korra and like the comics. Didn't they add something in that like the airbenders were like this free love society where everyone just had sex with everybody.
I think
That really good thing.
that's the thing that people, because Aang doesn't have parents, he's just raised by monks, and I'm just like, the thing is that's just something you could kind of guess on their culture that you don't need to bring up. Like, you can just kind of infer, okay, you know, they have a different way of, you know, I guess maybe they are one of like one of those neo-Christian cults from the 18th century, from the 19th century, that like actually have things like free love where they would just separate children at birth. But they didn't bring it up in the show because it's obviously not really that appropriate to bring up. But
No, I mean, well, they're based on Tibetan monasticism, so I just figured that some of the kids were taken and trained as monks.
Mm-hmm.
But
I mean, that's what I figured too. Yeah.
because I mean that's like how it works. I mean that's how it works in Catholicism. At least it did historically. Is you give a kid to the monastery and they'd be raised a monk.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that was something they added in like afterwards,
Mm-hmm.
and like
I haven't read the comics because I just hear like they do certain things, like they have Zuko and May break up, and I'm like, well, that storyline kind of resolved itself, and it wasn't and they're not apparently that good. I don't know. I'm mixed on whether I want to read them, because the thing is, I don't care what happens to Zuko's mom. That
that was a thing. I was wondering where Zuko's mom was the entire time, and I kind of looked on the wiki and I saw like images of her, but I didn't realize those were actually from the comics until I finished the entire series, and Zuko's mom didn't appear once, and I was like, what?
Oh yeah, it's when Ozai basically says like, well, if you want to find out, Zuko, you can read these comics.
what's the implication supposed to be that Zuko was Iroh's son?
No.
Because that was what I always thought.
That's actually was one of the most confusing things to me until back in 2015 when I finally figured out that the whole plot was that so Fire Lord Azula, Zuko's grandpa, is dickhead, who like after Ozai wanted to take the throne from his older brother because he wants power, and Iroh became very kind of weak after his son died and doesn't have an heir to the throne. So I guess for that insolence, Azulan's so pissed he basically says, you know what, you're so ungrateful, I'm gonna have you sacrifice your own son. And so him and his wife basically came up with a plot to, I think it's basically implied she murdered Azulan and forged it so that his last dying wish was for Ozai to take the throne. So it saves Zuko's life, and it protects, and it makes sure Ozai is still is the heir to the throne. And then I think it's around that time that Iroh kind of goes on his own spiritual journey, because it talks about how he went to the spirit world, which is another thing they ruin in Korra. Like, just the entire theme, the entire atmosphere of the spirit world is absolutely perfect in the original series, where it's just so kind of weird. They have like backwards playing music. But yeah, moving on, because we're just kind of talking about the whole show, right? And something I've noticed is that each season has its own very distinct feel to it. But in terms of quality, I think it's generally considered that season 1 is the weakest, but that's like not saying much, because it's like 8 out of 10 versus 2 10 out of 10s, you know?
Right, yeah.
Because that one, it's more just them wandering around, just trying to get to the North Pole and certain things stopping them, as opposed to there's this bigger thing of, we have to get Aang, first off, let's get Aang a earthbending teacher, and then we have to get to Ba Sing Se. And that entire arc, 5-episode arc when they're in Ba Sing Se, is probably my favorite in the entire series. But yeah, characters and the writing are probably the two strongest reasons why people liked the show. So, Argent, who's your favorite character in the show?
Probably Katara. It's either Katara or Toph. It's a very close call between the two of them.
Mm-hmm.
Which is maybe weird, because I don't know, do people normally like one but not the other? Or I don't know how the fandom normally works on these things.
Kami.
Because Katara and Toph are kind of like headbutting each other in the beginning, and they're kind of like they have opposing personalities, kind of. Toph is a bit more. Do you guys know what like the temperaments are?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so when I think of Katara, I think of her as like a kind of phlegmatic, melancholic kind of type, and what that means is that she's like super sensitive, and she's basically like water. The phlegmatic, melancholic type is kind of like water. It kind of takes the shape of whatever container it's in, and that's what Katara does. Katara puts her foot down when she needs to put her foot down, but most of the time she's acting as literally like she's kind of the backbone of
Team Avatar.
Yeah, she's like the support system. Without Katara, that would like a lot would fall, because she's like the team mom. She's the one who doesn't like that one episode where they're in the desert and everyone is literally being a child and just complaining. Katara is tired. Katara is just out of her mind, like exhausted.
Out of her element too, because there's no water out there.
Right, yeah, and she's literally alone. Like Sokka and like
Sokka's hot.
Sokka
high.
and Momo are high. Aang is just getting angry, and Toph is blind. Like she's the one who like pulls everything together. And Toph, on the topic of temperaments, Toph is probably like a sanguine.
I think she's someone says in the chat she's normally considered to be choleric.
Oh, is she? Okay,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Aang's probably more
sanguine, honestly. But yeah, so yeah, I can so it makes sense. Katara and Toph kind of butt heads in the beginning, because phlegmatics and cholerics are kind of they're pretty much like the opposite. Well, yeah, they are opposites in a way. Because I don't know, as a phlegmatic myself, I kind of shy in the presence of cholerics. So I get it, but yeah, sorry, I know that was a tangent. I can see why.
No, it's fine.
I can see if the fandom were to find it weird that you both Toph and Katara. It's understandable why, because they're opposites.
But yeah, I find Katara interesting because you have similar characters to her in a lot of stuff that are really obnoxious, and I can't really think of one off the top of my head. And I think initially probably a lot of people find her a bit annoying.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, as time goes along, you kind of realize that
she's necessary.
Well, the rest of the team are grossly irresponsible.
Yeah.
And if she wasn't there to make them keep them in line, the whole thing would just fall apart. And I don't find her she's kind of I don't know if maybe not over. I don't know if overbearing is the right term, but she doesn't really come across as being bitchy or annoying.
Unless
I really
I never found that either, honestly. I know people do, and I'm just like, how?
Mm-hmm. And again, it's the point is I can see why she can come across like that, but the point is that it's completely and 100% justified because of the situation they're in. The episode that really comes to a head where they kind of resolve or give some closure on it is the season 3 episode, The Runaway, when they go into this town and Toph is able to use her earthbending, and the fact that she can really come across as a helpless blind little girl to just start scamming people, and she's like, this is a really bad idea. And Toph, because the thing is she doesn't like the maternal aspect of Katara because the fact that her own mother was so overbearing and had no kind of connection with her that she wanted to get away from that. the thing about the characters is because I don't know if I would probably say my favorite character is Toph, just because Toph, but I would say objectively, if you can say that, or a character that's done so well is Zuko, because he just goes through the most development. But it's the interesting is those two characters are incredibly strong characters, yet they're kind of opposite in the sense that Toph doesn't really go through that much development because she's already incredibly comfortable with who she is. Whereas Zuko starts out incredibly weak. I would describe him starting out very weak and completely not understanding what he's doing, and not understanding that essentially he's being played. That, like, it's pretty clear that Ozai had no intention that Zuko was going to find the Avatar. He was just trying to get rid of him because he's just an embarrassment to him, you know? And, like, he's almost certainly just wanted Azula to take the throne because she's just literally like her own father, whereas Zuko is a lot, I guess, always had that kind of gentler side on his mother's side that was gonna be considered a weakness or a liability. But I remember, Argent, you had a thing about the characters, and you didn't actually like Zuko that much.
No, I hate Zuko.
Why?
Wait, why?
I just find him really obnoxious and whiny and boring, and I don't really see anything likable about him, to be honest.
Oh.
Well, Go ahead.
Oh, no. You go ahead. Like, because
he's not supposed to be likable in the beginning. He's supposed to be this incredibly stubborn, just angry teenager. And that the point is that the thing is, he's very clearly analogous to the prodigal son in the Bible, with Iroh being like his own father, because you feel really bad for Iroh, who's just so kind of calm and patient with him, and really considers him to be his like replacement son, and he's just trying to get Zuko to hold back and be a better person. And you think at the end of season 2 he finally got it, but then he betrays his uncle again, and like just throws away all of his advice. And so it's really heartwarming and heartbreaking at the end when they meet with the Order of the White Lotus, which I actually learned is based off of a real Chinese Buddhist secret society. Yeah, I thought it was just something they kind of made up, but no, there was a real Order of the White Lotus. But when he comes back and Iroh just embraces him and he's like, I was never angry at you. I was just upset. I was sad that you were lost. And it's like, that's the prodigal son right there. Because I would say that with Avatar, a lot of anime it's Western aesthetics, but still Eastern ethics or Eastern themes. Whereas, like, you know, they love, like, anime, they really love stuff like Victorian England. They love kind of Western medieval fantasy settings, but they still have their own kind of that same kind of Eastern mindset, whereas Avatar is really in love with Eastern aesthetic, but it still ultimately has a Western ethic to it. Like another great example of it is at the end of season 2, Aang is trying to unlock all his chakras so he can control the Avatar state, right? And the last one is he has to let go of all earthly attachments, but he's in love with Katara and can't do it. But rather than ultimately say that you have to do that, like, so you can be an emotionless Buddhist monk, Iroh basically says, actually, no, Aang, you did the right thing. You shouldn't have to give up on your concern for the world. And ultimately, when Aang does do that, when he has to separate from Katara to try and protect her, guess what happens? Well, Azula kills him, and it's because Katara cares about him. That's what ultimately saves him. And there's the shot when she's holding him, which is exactly the same pose as Christ is in Mary, with Mary in the La Pieta of Mary holding the body of Jesus.
I actually saw that, and I thought that was interesting as well, yeah.
And even it kind of comes to play at the very end when Aang is contemplating the fact that he might have to kill the Fire Lord, which I think that ending, that one I think has some controversy and has some mixed opinions on, but like the fact that when he's talking with his previous the Avatar Yang Chen, the last airbending avatar before him, she has this good quote where it's like, Aang, you can never detach yourself from the world because your duty is, as the Avatar is to the world. But yeah, but other characters is, what do people think about Sokka? Because I love him, and I don't think he gets enough.
I think he was the worst written of the gang. I think they missed a big opportunity with him. Sorry, you can. I'm just gonna go.
No, go ahead.
So, because I think it's an interesting idea to have someone with the team who's not a bender. But I feel like Sokka, if they were gonna have him be like, his thing is his intelligence and like his skill, they should have given him like, I don't know, a repeating crossbow or something like that, or like more gadgets and stuff. But he just kind of like didn't do anything for like 90% of the series, and then he got a sword, and then he immediately loses his sword. And it's just kind of, I just feel he was just not really used for any particular purpose.
He did have a boomerang though, but he lost that as well.
Sokka's strength isn't even necessarily just in pure fighting. He's the idea guy. He's, I think I've heard from if anybody's seen E:'R's videos on Korra, he makes the point that Sokka's probably one of the smartest people in the Avatar world, in that he comes up with the idea of how to fix the hot air balloon. He comes up with the invasion plan. And, like, at the end of the series, it's literally just him being able to figure out, hey, we're going to... Like, he breaks his own dad and Suki out of prison, out of, like, the, out of the Boiling Rock, the most secure Fire Nation prison in the world. And, like, he's the one that managed to destroy, like, 12 massive Zeppelins in the span of a few minutes.
Yeah, but it still feels like they just kind of pull it out. Like, they're like, oh, okay, we need Sokka to actually do something.
Well, it was necessary for him to do that, and he's also able to be like, hey, we can still help out, we can still be right there for Aang while he's fighting Mark Hamill.
I mean, I think like Sokka is the underdog basically. Like you have Toph who has like a disability, a physical disability, but that doesn't stop her. But like I think Sokka's relatable for those who actually feel like they actually don't do anything. Like to those like people who actually feel like, oh, I literally just contribute nothing. But I mean, to like young people who actually feel that way, like that's not okay. But Sokka is a good representation of like, no, it's like even though Sokka is kind of clumsy, kind of like he's funny, but and he doesn't really have like an obvious superpower like the rest of them. He's still like a little like he's still vital in a way, and like I think they made it clear like in that one episode where when he goes to train with the Swordmaster guy,
Robert
like,
Patrick, yes,
yeah.
I love looking up all the voice actors for it. Like, just as an aside, do you know that Serena Williams, the tennis player, does a small voice in the show?
What?
Yeah, in the Invasion, there's that nice Fire Nation guard that's kind of him, and apparently it's because she was such a big fan of the show that they just said, hey, you want to do a minor role? And so yeah, Serena Williams is in the show.
What?
So is Tara Strong, who is of course the voice of Raven, Twilight Sparkle. She played Azula's part. She was the actress for Azula in the episode where they're at the play.
Oh, damn. I wanted to be an Avatar. I would have been too young.
But yeah, well...
I still think Sokka was under... Like, I don't think he was, like, consistent. I just kind of felt like whenever they needed, like, a plot device, they kind of pulled him out and had him come with something.
I think he's useful enough. To me, it's like, if we're going to use mythology, he's the Odysseus to, like, Aang's, Perseus. Because Odysseus doesn't really have any massive strength or anything. He gets by in the fact that he's incredibly smart and tenacious. And
I
yeah,
guess like a counter like but Odysseus was actually like the leader of
yeah,
everyone, whereas like yeah, that's true. But Sokka, I guess Sokka was like a kind of
he's
also
also
a
good.
support thing in a way.
He's
But I
also
can see sorry, I can see how his character development isn't because he because compared to like others like Aang and like Zuko, his character development isn't as strong. I would agree with that, but I would say he's still like necessary in a way. If that makes sense.
he's more. The thing is, I've just noticed this is he's more of the calm. He's a calmer person. He doesn't. The thing is, like, he doesn't have the same massive outbursts as people like Aang or Zuko have, which is kind of good because he doesn't have that emotional connection to bending that could let him, like Aang hurt burning Katara, right, when he doesn't know how to control firebending, and Zuko basically having his entire drive being trying to track down the Avatar and murder his friends. I and
Right.
I,
Also,
and
Sokka just looks so much better with his hair down. I don't know why.
Yes!
everybody's hair looks better as the show goes on.
I don't. I saw Sokka with his hair down. I'm just like, just keep your hair down. I'm confused. Why would you have it up? It looks so weird.
I didn't even recognize him. Like, he just looked so much better, and I was just like,
Yeah.
I also like the fact that like Zuko too, where his stupid top knot and bald will look.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
But yeah, oh, here's another fun thing with the characters is I still remember this being at the tail end of it is people were obsessed with the shipping wars of people wanted Zuko and Katara together. Or it was either that or you wanted Zuko and or you wanted Katara and Aang, and you had to freaking pick a side. You had to pick a side, and I was like, why on earth what gave people the idea that Zuko and Katara would ever be together or that would work, considering that she kind of despises him?
my two favorite Avatar ships are
Oh god.
an obvious one, but I don't know why it wasn't canon because it was kind of implied, is Sokka Toph.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Oh yeah.
and then a crack one I like is Sokka Azula.
Yes. That's one thing I remember is because I've also watched the commentary. They have a whole bunch of commentary tracks over a bunch of the episodes, and it's great. Kind of give it, and they're really worth a listen. That's where I got a lot of this information is when they're talking about during the invasion when Azula and Toph they don't really have hardly any screen time together, but like Azula just goes to Toph like I know you're blind, but so if you can't tell, I'm rolling my eyes at you, and Toph's like I'll roll your whole head, and just those two strong personalities at each other. I'm not talking about shipping, but just like I would love to see them fight each other.
Oh yeah. Yeah. That'd be kind of
Just
cool.
two people that are generally incredibly comfortable with their own selves and strong-willed, but of course for Azula it's not based on anything and she completely goes fucking crazy.
Just while we're on topic of Toph, I always had the impression she was the strongest bender in this show, like by a significant margin.
Because she also learns how to metal bend her way out of the prison she's in when she gets captured after the desert. But Katara also learns how to blood bend. So as an extension of her water bending powers, which is also pretty neat to see.
Something I found that's actually kind of it's related to bloodbending, and it's something I kind of thought about, and it's kind of it's something that's kind of weird about earthbending, because it's like, they can bend rocks, so rocks, minerals, you can kind of connect that to metal, and it can make sense, right? They can also bend dirt and earth. That's organic material, that's what dirt is. And the thing is, in episode 6, which is another funny voice actor, is when Katara meets Haru, the Earthbender, and she gets herself imprisoned on the big coal mine shipyard. The warden is voiced by Mr. Sulu George Takei, but at the end of the episode, they're bending coal and now kill.
Right.
So on the one hand, you could say, well, that means they could earthbenders would be able to bend oil, and waterbenders wouldn't, even though it's a liquid. The other thing is that what are all living things on Earth based on? Carbon. Earth are the specific minerals or metals in it that you're bending rather than just rock.
Right.
Well-
The structure. Sorry, like the structure of the like at a molecular level, the structure of the atoms and everything is also different. So, what you're saying makes sense, actually.
Mm-hmm.
I think unless they introduce it in Korra, I think airbending is the only like type of bending that doesn't have like a tier 2 or like an advanced form, because like fire has electricity, water has blood, and earth has metal. I don't think air.
In Korra, surprise, surprise, in season 3 they have it in 2. They have like another tier 2 for earthbending, which is lava bending, because it's kind of the mixture of fire and earth. But airbending, apparently the ultimate form of it is you can just fly without needing a glider, and the main villain of that... Oh yeah, so I don't care about spoiling Korra because it's awful. In season 3, after Korra literally fucks up and ruins the Avatar cycle in the last season, for some reason that also means that now just a whole bunch of random people get airbending, and the most dangerous criminal on Earth who's locked up just happens to get airbending, and so he's able to start flying, and it looks so stupid.
This is great storytelling. Who wrote this?
Oh, Brian Konietzko and Mike DiMartino. They didn't have a bunch of the other writers to help them flesh it out. People like Josh Hamilton and Aaron Ehazen and Tim Hedrick.
Sometimes I look at like certain like storyboards and just wondered like what was going on in your head when you were writing this script. Like, did you think this was going to be a good idea?
What's interesting is that a series that I think is a spiritual successor to Avatar, because it has a lot of the same writing. It has they bring back Mae Whitman, who was Katara, for one episode, which was kind of nice. Is the Voltron remake, which is a lot better. But yeah, like it's worth a watch, I'd say. But yeah, what were we talking about? Oh yeah, characters is. I like how there's the 3, like, going on to how the 3 seasons feel so kind of. I wouldn't say it's a problem, because it feels like it's a natural progression of the show being able to be more and more serious. Is like the big villain of each season is you got Admiral Zhao in the first season, Azula in the second one, and Ozai himself in the third. But like compared to Azula and Ozai, who the hell is Admiral Zhao? He's just well, his voice actor is, if you've ever seen Harry Potter, he's the voice of Lucius Malfoy.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Jason Isaacs.
Oh, that's cool. Okay.
I just love how many different, and that's just another thing to the show's credit, is the voice acting is fantastic. There's very few characters that feel like, well, they were just phoning it in, because like a smart decision was for Aang to actually have Zach Tyler Eisen was a 12-year-old boy when they started making the show, so he's the same age as Aang, and so like they didn't have some 50-year-old woman voice him, and it feels a lot more authentic, because you can kind of hear him starting to go through his own puberty towards the end. Like his voice starts kind of getting a little lower and cracking in season 3, which I think is great because it shows the character itself he's aging.
I think the take that maybe is the weirdest for me, that I don't know if I've seen anybody else. I was actually fairly sympathetic towards the Fire Nation. I don't know if I'm like the only person who was.
They're a well-written villain in the start, because I think one of my favorite episodes is the Avatar and the Fire Lord, where it shows the backstory of why the war happened in the first place and what happened to Roku. And by the way, another voice actor is Ron Perlman, is the voice of older Fire Lord Sozin.
Oh, interesting.
And because it starts out where they're not just the Nazis, where they had, well, they eventually are, but they aren't just completely insane and evil. Is Fire Lord Sozin had kind of he had a good intention to begin with, because the Fire Nation was the first to go through an industrial revolution, and that basically meant that probably the quality of life for them was started to get massively higher than everybody else, because they'll have a lot higher access to food and medicine and, you know, mass production, which leads to a much higher quality of life than in the Earth Kingdom. And like they're very analogous to Japan in the late 19th and early 20th century. And so, like, in Imperial Japanese propaganda and the Second Sino-Japanese War, a lot of it we're basically saving the Asian people from themselves and from Western colonialists. And, like, under Japan, Asia can prosper. But, of course, in reality, like, Ozai's plan was I'm just going to start genociding everybody because they won't listen to us.
Yeah, and basically throwing a tantrum, yeah.
Mm-hmm. It is. Go ahead. Why do you like the Fire Nation?
I think I just don't really like the Eastern worldview where everything happens in cycles and the status quo always needs to be restored. And I just don't really like the whole like balance thing and stuff like that. So I kind of like that they were trying to like alter the cycle. I also kind of, and maybe this is something I just read into it that wasn't there, that they kind of represented, I don't know, I guess kind of rationalism versus like ruled by the spirits and stuff. And I kind of was sympathetic to the idea of humanity becoming free from like all of these weird things.
Well, that's the religious aspect of the show, where the true religion in the Avatar world is, you know, based on Eastern mysticism, and I prefer that over just kind of pure rationalism and atheism, and the fact that we're going to now just destroy the moon just so we can, just to get in. I mean, I guess the similarity is in Princess Mononoke, how you have Irontown, that's kind of a representation of Western or, you know, industrialization, modernism. Because again, Studio Ghibli is a massive influence on Avatar. What's also a massive influence is, Argent might agree, and I don't know if you've seen it. If you've seen Secret of Blue Water,
I have not.
It's was made by the same studio behind Evangelion, and it's a loose adaptation of
20,000 Leagues. Well, just everything Jules Verne.
Yeah, and except for, instead of it just being some French scientist and his assistant, it's this young French inventor and his brown waifu, who's very much like Katara.
Who's a palette swap Shinji.
Yes, that's what they initially got for. That was the initial face design for Shinji. Was, let's just take Nadia and make her a male. But somebody in the chat said the Fire Nation are spiritual Cardassians from Star Trek.
Yes, they are, because they have a fascist.
Yes,
they literally have a fascist state.
What's kind of great is that, like, they nowadays, because in Legend of Korra, like in season 4, because it's good to. I'm using Korra a lot because it's a great example of comparing how it doesn't work and how it does. Is in season 4, they basically just have earthbending she Hitler take over the Earth Kingdom and just try to have her own fascist state. And at the end of it, like when she's defeated, the Earth King then just says, we're just going to transition to a democracy and I'm going to abdicate the throne. Which is the dumbest. Which, when they did that in China in the early 20th century, yeah, that worked out real well. But what I like at the end of the original series is, like, Iroh and Zuko have this idea of, we have to bring our country back in line because it's gone. The people leading have gone crazy. Where it ends, where it's more like after the Napoleonic Wars rather than the end of World War II, where the Fire Nation as a country and its philosophy isn't the problem. The problem was its leadership was completely insane and was, negatively impacting every country around them. So it's like, it doesn't end where the Fire Nation becomes the Democratic Fire Republic. It ends with the rightful heir to the throne taking power. But speaking of the ending, people talk about how the Lion Turtle is basically giving Aang this primeval ability to bend energy itself and take away bending as kind of this thing they pulled out of their ass and as a deus ex machina because they didn't want to have Aang kill somebody. What did you guys think of that?
Oh, sorry, just before that, I just wanted, because we skipped her, one of my favorite characters, probably in my top 3, is probably Azula.
Mm-hmm.
I think she's a really, really good villain. Like, I actually found her scary, to be honest.
Oh, yeah. And she goes insane by the end. I mean,
that's one slight hiccup I might have, is that it kind of shows her going crazy just a little too fast, but I
think
it makes sense that she does, though.
I think what the show fails to show or present is the buildup of the insanity that Azula has. I mean, we see like flashbacks of her childhood with Zuko and her mother, and they're So, do y'all remember the one beach episode of the Fire Nation?
Oh, that's one of my favorite episodes.
That's how you do a beach, and again, that's how you do a beach episode. They use it brilliantly for character development as well as fan service.
It was amazing. Like the dialogue at the beach, towards the end of the episode, where they're literally just calling out each other on each other's faults, it's amazing. It's the inner dialogue. It's the inner dialogue that one has with him or herself on his or her faults, and like it's a nice way to just show like, oh, these characters aren't perfect either, but yeah, so that episode was actually one of my favorites. But I do agree that it kind of seems that Azula went insane a little too fast, because they didn't really show like, or at least it was apparent to me that the buildup of insanity and the buildup of being seen as basically a monster by her mother all her life just kind of like built up in her, and she never addressed it, and
that's
so
a big problem, is that like you see how much it does turn Ursula, or Ursa, whatever her name is. Now, Ursula is the villain from Little Mermaid. But it turns Zuko's mom. She's a hypocrite and a bad person too, since she loves her own daughter, or she loves her son, but absolutely kind of is terrified of her own daughter. And
yeah, rather than like helping her daughter grow, and it's just ridiculous, like, for a mother to be scared of her own child like that, and it must have taken an absolute mental toll on her while she was growing up. But none of this was seen throughout the entire series, because Zuko was the main focus of that family rather than Azula, because Azula was seen as a villain, and like it wasn't that. So what I really appreciate about that particular beach episode is that it kind of humanized like I guess them in a way.
And that's the other thing, is that May and Ty Lee kind of going back, like betraying her. I think had they had a couple scenes prior to them starting to have doubts about helping Azula, I think that would have helped out, because them betraying her kind of feels a little abrupt.
I think that's I think it was abrupt for May, but I don't think it was so as abrupt for Ty Lee, because
she didn't even really want to go with Azula in the first place.
Yeah, and so that was really apparent. Like it was apparent that Azula made Ty Lee uncomfortable for whatever reason. But May is just a stone cold girl throughout the entire thing, and her voice is so monotone. It's great until that one beach episode. But yeah, so I was a little surprised when she turned on. Well, not surprised because I kind of expected it because that's how like the story usually goes. But it's not. It wasn't. It was done a little too fast, and it was just kind of like, oh, we expect May to turn over to the good side now, so we're just gonna make her good now. It made sense for Ty Lee. It just like May seemed more like an ambivalent character for a lot of it until she was undying and professing her love for and loyalty for Zuko. So I thought that was
that's one thing is another one of the best episodes is the is the Tales of Ba Sing Se, where they had a whole bunch of different writers kind of make their own little shorts. I guess kind of as filler, and you have the episode of Zuko and Jin, that Earth Kingdom girl that's in Ba Sing Se. And the thing is, even though that entire sequence is like a minute and a half long, it kind of creates this whole idea that I thought is, she's kind of what the whole life Zuko has in Ba Sing Se with Uncle. Yes, you can say that's a much better life than they were having, and like it's better than like what Zuko thinks he's supposed to do, but it's not Zuko's life. It's what Iroh wants for Zuko rather than what Zuko truly wants. And so it's like you got, instead of May, who he really does love, you have this nice Earth Kingdom girl who's just very normal, and you have his nice little job in the tea shop. But the thing is like at the end of it, it's Zuko, like he liked being on that date, but it's ultimately not, he can't go, that's not him, you know?
Yeah, that makes sense. And so I guess, yeah, like, so Iroh is a kind of hypocrite in himself too, because he's always just pushing Zuko, look inside yourself and everything.
But he's pushing on what does he want for Zuko, and I think he does eventually realize that.
And so he's basically doing the same thing that Azula does, except Azula doesn't even like push him at all. He's just, which is why I think like it made sense for Zuko to betray Iroh when in the Earth Kingdom, because like he's realizing that like, oh, this entire time it's not actually what I want, it's actually what my uncle wants. And so he feels like his choice should be what is to go with Azula. So that kind of made sense for me,
because it was still his choice. But it also reminds you of, in the episode, a couple episodes before that, when Zuko frees Appa and kind of makes that turn to the good, and like kind of has a physical breakdown in response to that. In his dream, when he thinks he's the Fire Lord, there's those two dragons that are trying to tempt him with their own way forward. One of them is Azula and the other is Iroh. They're both trying to convince him of their path rather than just him making the choice. Something that I think part of my favorite episode is what, just in terms of action, is the Earth King, when they're basically just like, they got Appa back, fuck it, we're gonna go see the Earth King, and we don't care who stops us. And it's a great kind of display of how much they've grown, because now just those sequences of them just knocking down the Earth King's elite guards, just like nothing. Whereas, because that's something the show really does well with its writing, is really showing a growth in the bending, rather than like in a lot of shonen anime, it'll feel like they just learn things in stops and starts, as opposed to like how martial arts actually works is you just gradually get better. And like I just love that shot when they're all running down the stairs, and so Toph just kind of bends all of the stairs so that they're a slant, and they're all just sliding down.
So, like, I guess I don't want to like extend the topic, but Iroh is actually my favorite character.
Oh
in
yeah,
the series, hands down. He's best boy. But just because he's like so grounded in everything, honestly, and it's like he says a lot of truths that are just like relevant to like just these little like tenets of truth.
Mm-hmm.
that are just so relevant today. And I just found them like, wow, like this is like old man wisdom right here. And he's just so chill about everything.
He's
Honestly,
like,
Iroh's
he's Confucius. He is.
yeah, he is. You're right. You're right. I didn't realize that until just now, but yeah, he is. So I guess I like Confucius the best.
Mm-hmm. But what is funny is that so his voice actor was Mako, who is a famous kind of Japanese voice actor who also did the voice of Aku in Samurai Jack. Mako died like towards the end of making season 2, so they had to get another guy to voice him. And it kind of worked out well, I hate to say it, but because for the first like half of season 3, Iroh isn't talking because he's now just kind of giving Zuko the silent treatment. He's like, "You've betrayed me enough times. I can't just keep giving you advice. You have to figure this out on your own." And so they got Greg Baldwin, who does who does sometimes double for Mako because they have a similar voice. I kind of like his performance a little better, even though they're both fantastic.
Interesting. Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on Iroh, Argent?
I kind of liked him when I was initially watching the show, and now I kind of don't like him. I'm not really sure if I'm able to. I just because I generally took the Azula Ozai side in the family dispute, so.
Ozai, of course, being voiced by Mark Hamill, i.e. the Joker, i.e. Luke Skywalker. And I remember there's actually a great there's like interviews with Mark Hamill over his various voice acting roles, and when they get to him as Ozai, like he's just kind of saying like this show was way too smart to be for kids. Like he's just saying show's way too smartly written for this, which I thought was kind of funny.
It is kind of funny, and I guess you can't really appreciate what the characters are because it's like a fun show. Avatar's a fun show. It and like kids can basically get the premise of it. Oh, like bad fire guy nation must save world, which is a usual trope for a lot of like kids TV series. So that's fine. But yeah, like a lot of what like the dialogue in Avatar is I think you would have to rewatch Avatar like as an adult or something to like grasp what they are saying and just to realize how deep the show actually is.
What I think is interesting is that I don't think you could have Avatar not be a kid show and have it still work, because far too often they have like with quote unquote adult TV they have to have like sex jokes and horrific violence to make up for poor storytelling. And when you're forced to the fact that there is a little more fan service than I initially thought, like the beach episode and all that, but like obviously for the most part, you know, it's kind of refreshing you don't have any of that. Though where it does come to a head is like in the invasion episode where they're actually at war, is you never actually see anybody kill each other, and like when Sokka and his dad are fighting the Fire Nation, they're just like breaking apart their spears. They're not actually like trying to hurt them.
Like we don't even see like Katara's mother die.
No, you don't really need to, but
right.
Okay, so here's a question, just something about Korra. So the Fire Nation colonies became Republic City?
I think that's both. That's I think also mentioned in the comics as well, is that they were trying to figure out what to do about the colonies, because you know the area that's that's kind of based on Manchuria and these kind of islands off of the coast between the Fire Nation and the Earth Kingdom. They initially belonged to the Earth Kingdom, and then like the Fire Nation started colonizing them. And I guess at the end of the war, they're trying to figure out what to do about them, because they can't just do to. I guess they decided not to do to the Fire Nation what they did to Germany after World War II and just...
I think they tried to.
But eventually they said, we're just going to create kind of an international zone, like the free city of Danzig, Republic City, and just have it be administered by the one world government. Because that's one of the biggest problems with Korra, is that, like, because essentially the Fire Nation's ideas win out in the end, because the world becomes very modernized and rationalized in
Right.
the sense that the balance between the nations ends, because now you just have this new kind of quasi-nation, quasi-united nations of multiculturalism and all that. And it's like, yeah, I'm sure that's what Aang's vision was, is let's make this enormous, sprawling industrial city. And let's have a gigantic statue of me right outside of it.
So is it the most powerful of the nations?
Not really, because I think it's only that city and the area around it, and because they don't really delve into the idea of the politics of the nations anymore, apparently until season 4, which I didn't even watch season 4. All I know is they just have earthbending She-Hitler take over, and...
Because don't the, like, nations basically, like... Yeah, aren't they, like, irrelevant in Korra?
They start becoming irrelevant, I think.
Also, I don't get why the Fire Emblem... Sorry, not the Fire Emblem. The Fire Nation diehards would be like, okay, the solution we want for our ultra-nationalism is, like, global multicultural...
It's almost like the people that made Korra didn't think it through, and were just like, we want this cool, giant 1920s Chinese city, and we're going to build the show around that.
Like,
and we're going to massively waste Steve Bloom, which is a horror. He plays the big bad guy in season 1 of Korra, and his whole
no way.
And
really?
And his whole thing is he's able to take away people's bending, and that's the threat. And like you're like, what? And
like
it's
a Eraserhead from My Hero Academia.
I thought it meant
he's a bender.
No, he's a waterbender that figure out some form of blood bending can take away bending, and Korra has to fix it. And it's bad. It's a massive waste of Steve Bloom, which is it's actually surprising that he wasn't in the original show, because every other voice actor was. Because you got Grey Delisle, her name's Grey Griffin now because she got married, but she plays, of course, Azula, and every other kind of bad character in 2000s cartoons. But yeah, Korra sucks.
Yeah,
the music in it is better, but
Does anyone like Korra?
I don't know.
I've never seen Korra because I'm like really hesitant on, I don't know, because I've heard a lot of like, I've heard that it doesn't live up to the Avatar name, so I'm just like,
But yeah, I don't know. Like I tried after rewatching it. I did the same thing back in 2015 and this year of trying to rewatch Korra just to see how far I can get after rewatching the original. I got like one episode and I just can't take it anymore. It's just not good. And it's, you know, it could have been forgivable if it was one, because they initially just planned it was going to be one season. It was just going to be this one, 12 episode spin-off of like, oh, what's everyone up to, 70 years later.
I would have loved a spin-off. Like, honestly, like a different, I guess, like a different spin-off. Not just like a continuation kind of.
I remember this is after Korra ended, like, I was just curious because I had a thought. Because everybody shipped Zuko and Katara in the original series, and everybody shipped Korra and Asami, who's her female friend who does nothing in Legend of Korra, for no reason, because the show got taken over by a bunch of Tumblr retards. But after Korra ended, and they just said, because it literally ends somewhat ambiguously, and it's like, essentially, Brian and Mike, the guys that created Avatar, they basically pulled a George Lucas on everybody. In terms of, Korra is very much like the prequels. I know Argent likes the prequels a lot, but
I do.
But it's that, like, they end it where after they beat the big She-Hitler, Katara and Asami just kind of they're like, all right, why don't we go on vacation in the spirit world? It's like, what? And then they just hold hands and they walk into a giant pillar of light. And then apparently that wasn't clear enough, so on their Tumblr pages, Brian and Mike both had to make posts saying, yes, we deliberately made it so they're gay now. And they said if you didn't notice it, you should remove your hetero lenses. It's like, well, you dickheads. But yeah, so people went insane with that, and that kind of wanted to get me back in the original series, because every other like kind of forum was like praising it, but except for 4chan were the only people that were still pissed off at it. And I remember they tried, like, for months in early 2015, they started. It was admirable, and it kind of gave me my own idea of, like, they wanted to make, well, why don't we come up with our own sequel series about what the Avatar after Korra has to deal with, and it'll be like, they said, like, it'll be like this Earth Avatar in a fictional Cold War setting. I'm like, that's stupid. And I thought, I think it'd be cool to have one about an Earth Avatar before Avatar Kyoshi, and have it be like One Piece, where it's Avatar pirate adventures, and the big villain is like this waterbending pirate warlord. I think that would have been fun.
That would have been cool.
Mm-hmm.
See, actually.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, 4chan trying to do anything constructive is funny to watch.
Why does Toph become a thought? That's what I want to know.
That's the dumbest
Why?
thing. She does. It's because in the first season, she's like, okay, her daughter is the big chief of police is the chief of police in Republic City, but then it's revealed she has other kids from different marriages. And it's like, oh, so their mother was a divorced kind of thought. Well, that's great.
No, but like that really doesn't seem like her.
No.
Personality.
Wait, is this in Korra?
Yes, it's in Korra.
No.
Yep. I don't want to consider Korra to be canon at all, because it also retcons a lot of the actual origins, where literally, like, they haven't, what's supposed to be one of the coolest parts of the whole series and franchises, Korra like goes back and connects with the first Avatar, who was just some guy, and apparently in the beginning of the world everybody lived on lion turtles, and they gave them the elements as gifts for hunting. And it's like, well, that's not how it works. That's not how any of this. The original, the moon was the first waterbender, the badger moles were the first earthbenders, the sky bison were the air ones, and the dragons were the firebenders. It's like they just completely circumvented that and retconned everything.
Also, how are like so many of isn't Korra 100 years in the future?
I think Korra's like 70 years in the future, and
okay.
That's something that actually kind of makes sense to me, because people criticize, like, how do you go from like kind of traditional Chinese cities to 1920s? Well, the Fire Nation was in the middle of their own industrial revolution. It's like They had ironclad ships, they had coal mines, they had steam power, and so you think it's like, say it's like 1860s or something, 70 years later could be kind of like the 1920s. So that didn't really bother me too much.
Well, that's kind of how it happened in Japan.
Yeah.
And China, so.
Mm-hmm.
Also, it's like Shanghai or something, whereas like the rest of the Earth Kingdom is still like rural China. And,
yeah. Go ahead.
No, just like Toph as a character, I kind of feel like she's the kind of girl, like, to win Toph's heart, you have to be like a Giga Chad. But like
Sokka.
Yeah, but once you do that, like, she doesn't seem like the kind of girl who would just like jump from guy to guy. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't. Yeah, no, it doesn't. I don't think she was. She seems pretty like, I don't know. She's a tomboy, I think, but like she wouldn't like that. That has nothing to do with like whether she would actually be but
the other thing is she's 12.
Really doesn't seem like that.
The other thing is kind of hard because she's 12, so it's kind of the thing about the characters in the show is it's kind of like the opposite of it's kind of like the opposite of anime, where a lot of characters will look like they're 10 years old, but they're like, I'm 19. Avatar, they all look several years older than they actually are. Like, given how Tylee looks in her swimsuit, she is not 14. There is no way she is 14 years old.
Well, you can argue that the same thing can be said for a lot of like like other anime, like other characters and stuff. Like
Yeah.
a lot of the characters don't look their age that they're supposed to look.
I
But-
mean, we're getting into like that, but I mean, people go through puberty at different ages.
The thing I've also kind of noticed is that in Avatar, I think this is a world where at least people, it's kind of like how in Star Wars the Jedi tend to live longer than ordinary humans, is that the Avatars seem to live quite a bit longer because
You mean Benders?
Benders, yeah, that too,
I
because
feel like Bender's because wasn't Aang dead in Korra?
yeah, he's dead. Well, yeah, he has to be
Was that ever established yet why he was dead?
No,
'Cause he was an
I think
old
he's kind
man.
of old age,
yeah.
and it makes
Oh.
sense because men tend to pass away earlier than women do.
Why do girls ask? Why do guys die earlier than us? And it's just like them going through war and all these other stuff. But there's a meme about that. But anyways, well, it's because Avatar Kyoshi apparently canonically lived to be 240,
Interesting.
and I think it's they had to say that like, well, because she was the Avatar before Avatar Roku, who was 100 and say 70 years before, who was born 170 years before Aang, but they said that Avatar Kyoshi was born 400 years before Aang's time, so they kind of had to fit it together. And I guess she apparently was like this, essentially an Amazonian, who they also turned into bisexual in the comics.
What?
Yes, they said
What?
yeah, they apparently there's a new series of comics where it's called The Rise of Kyoshi, and apparently she had a boyfriend and a girlfriend. Just because they have to keep ruining things.
There's a lot of hints towards that.
I don't know. I mean, the thing is that like, it's weird though. I still think it's kind of weird that like, because Monk Gyatso, which is another nice nod, is that Aang's son is named Tenzin, and his trainer, his original father figure, was Monk Gyatso, and Tenzin Gyatso is the name of the current Dalai Lama. But like, apparently, like you have Aang's friend Bumi, the king of Omashu. He lives to be well over 112 years old, and so does Monk Gyatso, who was close friends with Avatar Roku, and he's still around during Aang's time, and he has to be in his like 80s at least. And so I think there's definitely something to be made that benders live longer.
I'm just gonna say that they age at the speed of plot, like in Star Wars.
Yes.
Where sometimes Jedi's age slower and sometimes they don't.
Mm-hmm.
I think just with Korra, we just have to like they didn't really think it through. Was it made by the same people who made the original?
Yeah,
or-
yeah. So
Yeah,
you know,
no, they had. You said they had two of the same writers from Avatar, right?
So
Or-
Avatar was created by the original series was created by Mike DiMartino and Brian Konietzko, and they also had a team of writers, including people like Aaron Ehas, his wife Elizabeth Welch Ehas, Tim Hedrick, and Joshua Hamilton, and a few others. So it had a whole bunch of writers that did different episodes, right? In much like what they did with George Lucas, they got a lot more control with Legend of Korra and were the main writers for the series.
Interesting.
And it didn't go well, and they basically had their own ideas, and yeah.
Well, I think a lot of good directors need to be on a leash. Like, I think Michael Bay, for whatever his faults, is an immensely talented director, but he really needs someone to just put him on a leash. To be like, no, Michael Bay. No black robots. No, like, dick jokes. Just stick to what you're good at. And I think, like, that was... This kind of, I guess, feels like... Because I saw Tenet recently, and Tenet feels like Christopher Nolan making a movie when he's completely off his leash and no one's telling him no. So I guess Korra is, like...
It's again why a lot of people criticize George Lucas is he directed A New Hope, but he didn't direct Empire and Jedi. But they basically gave him complete creative control over the prequels, and a lot of people don't like them. And Brian and Mike, or Brike, as they're called, had complete creative control over Korra, because again, for the same reasons of, well, everybody liked the original series, but it didn't even do well view wise. Apparently towards the end, when it was still on the air, it was a new episode of Korra was getting less views than a rerun of SpongeBob. Like, it just was not pulling in the views.
Who's also gay somehow.
Yes.
What?
But also celebrates Ramadan.
Who?
SpongeBob.
They announced that SpongeBob is gay.
Okay.
There's no indication. I thought Sally was his love interest.
Oh, God.
No, okay, wait, hang on. Do you remember that one episode of SpongeBob where he's watching some weird sea anemone thing? And then Gary comes in and then he's like, Gary! And then he kind of shuts off the TV. And a lot of people think that to be, something
That's like watching porn, yeah.
Right, and so maybe that's an indication. I don't know. I think it's still just pulled out of, like, the cloud.
No, they just made it up.
But I also love that months earlier they had a picture of SpongeBob and Patrick, and it's like them saying Happy Ramadan. They'll do anything these days.
I don't think there was any indication, at least. I haven't watched a ton of the show. It's just, I don't know, they just announce it.
Well, yeah, because that's what they do when they want to get attention.
What I think is really funny, just while we're on the topic, is you've been playing Persona 4, right, Fritz?
Some of it, yeah. I'm going to replay it again because I want to actually get through the gameplay properly, but I got to right after we get Rise, who I think she's going to be my waifu in that game.
Yeah, we could almost do another. When you finish that, let me know. We'll do
Yeah. Are you going to talk
4.
about kanji?
Well, there's a lot of that. I mean, you haven't gotten through Naruto yet, but I don't see any indication that Kanji was gay. Like, none.
Well, I think he was using. Isn't he like using that? Isn't he just like using that as a crutch for, like, he has no social skills and doesn't want to talk to, and is like afraid of other people?
No, that was that was his fear. B, he just said, like, women are mean to me.
So he's an incel.
Yeah, no, well, he's like what, 6'1", 6'2" at the age of, like, what, 15 or 16.
Mm-hmm.
He's really tall. He's not really interested in traditionally manly stuff, and a bunch of teenage girls, like, bullied him and were mean to him, and he doesn't like to be around teenage girls as a result of that. Like,
so he's like the opposite of Chris Chan.
Yeah, but, like, to me, none of that, like, indicates that he's gay. It just means that, like, he's, I don't like, teenage girls are pretty nasty, and as a friend of mine put it, puberty is literal body horror. Teenagers are insane.
I love just that's a great to bring it back to Avatar. That's another great line from the beach episode when Tylee's like, "You guys, we can't scream. We're all gonna break out." And Zuko's like, "You got bad skin. Normal teenagers get to worry about bad skin. I don't have that luxury." And it's kind of fun. Like, I like what Azula does of, like, when they're gonna go to the party. She's like, "I want to know what it's like to be like normal teenagers for once." Because, like, I like how they're completely out of their element when they're at the party and at the beach, because, like, they've grown up way more than these kind of pampered other Fire Nation brats, where, Zuko, of course, has to completely has been on his own for 3 years, or out of the Fire Nation, and Azula is just, like, this sadistic kind of mastermind who's trying to find her brother on the Avatar, and so, like, all this, like, her showing up precisely on time to the party is like, well, that's what you're supposed to do with, like, war meetings. But it's like she's at a party and the guy's like, oh god. I love when I don't know, a really funny moment, because the show is also really hilarious. Like, there's moments of it that made me still laugh out loud. Like, when Tylee's trying to give her the advice about how to, like, all right, how do I get a guy to like me? Well, you have to laugh at everything he says, even if it's not funny. Well, that sounds shallow and that sounds.
Yeah, no, that's stupid.
Well, yeah, I love what Azula said. She's like, that sounds shallow and stupid. Let's do it.
Well, Azula's Azula. She just has to say, look, you're the lucky guy who gets to be my consort.
Yes.
And
you will give me an heir. Do you have good genetics?
Just be like, okay. I mean, on one hand, to like get dominated by a girl like that is kind of like bad, but if it's Azula, I think it kind of balances it out and makes you a Chad.
But another hilarious moment, the one that really made me laugh, is the episode where Aang is like can't sleep because he keeps having nightmares about before the invasion. Is when
Oh, I remember that. Yeah.
when Sokka puts on the fake beard, and is trying to give him therapy. I couldn't stop laughing.
Oh, that was actually great. Like that was amazing.
Maybe
yeah.
you need another. Now tell me more about this Fire Lord person. Why does he bother you?
Do you guys remember Melon Lord?
Yes, I am not Toph. I am Melon Lord.
Yes.
Why couldn't I? When do I get my life-changing journey with Zuko?
That was one thing about season 3, that because like season 3 is very much, I guess you can kind of call it filler, but I don't really call it filler so long as it's moving the plot forward or it's developing the characters. Because season 3 it's a few actual plot points, like them getting like the invasion and then the finale, and the rest of it's more just kind of very character focused.
Yeah.
And Toph and like, you know, Aang gets a couple episodes, Katara gets a couple episodes, Sokka gets a couple episodes, like, you know, one before the invasion and then one after with Zuko. Toph gets essentially half of one, because the one where she's scamming all those guys in the town, that's basically half about Toph and half about Katara, and she really doesn't get anything else. And again, I think it's maybe it's both because like she's the newest character of the group, but also I think it can be attributed to the fact that she's already a strong enough character as it is, that she doesn't need that much development.
She's kind of the libido, the life force. I don't mean that sexually, but like she is, of the team, like she's kind of the one who's just there. Like she doesn't give a shit. She's a badass, and she knows she's a badass.
It's also it's also interesting because like Toph is I mean, she's Earth, right?
Yeah.
She's also grounded. So I think it was a clever plot point on the writer's part to make her grounded in that sense and have her be Earth at the same time.
I just love her intro episode where she's at the she can.
Oh, the blind bandit.
Yes, that's probably my favorite episode, of just like when they have this nice prim and proper town, and as somebody that took martial arts or that practiced karate for like 10 years around that time, I just love like when you have because you've got like real karate schools, and then you've got like kind of the strip mall ones where like they don't really have any care for the actual martial art. Like you have that with Toph's teacher, is like also the teacher of the class. It's like, hey, if you sign up for lessons now, I'll bump you up to the next belt. And like, wow. But it's secretly like everybody in the town just loves seeing the earth wrestling. And just like individual moves that they do is just fantastic, because all of the actual fighting and bending is based off of real martial arts. Like they had martial arts consultants with it. Like water bending is very much based on Tai Chi. Firebending is based off of a certain type of like northern Chinese kung fu, and Toph's specific earthbending style is apparently based off of a very rare called Southern Praying Mantis style. And the guy that they got to be the consultant for her is like this 500-pound like Brazilian Catholic guy that's like a master of this super rare like version of kung fu. And like her, like just the fact that she doesn't have her, when she's bending, her hands are both like in claws with her fingers pointed upwards. Nobody else does that in the show. Like, and that episode has like one of my favorite bending moments, right? When she's being attacked and she's on the giant kind of Earth Nation symbol, essentially the coin with the hollow square in the middle. She just bends it and shifts it 90 degrees and causes the other guy to slam into the other two. And just that movement. But yeah.
It's interesting because I just watched two things. One is that it's I just watched a movie called it's by Mamoru Honda. It's The Boy and His Beast, I think. It's called The Boy and His Beast. And I immediately thought of Toph during one of the scenes because what I don't know if any of you I don't know if either of you have seen it, but it's about a boy who goes into the spirit world and he basically gets good at fighting, but to get good at fighting, he kind of follows his master. Um, and what he does is copy his movements all the time, and then he gets so good at just hearing his master's movements that he can kind of predict where his what his master's movements are exactly are. And he's like, I'm not even looking, and I'm just like, Toph, is that you? And well, it's interesting because a lot of the fighting techniques are Chinese. But what if you pay attention closely, um, what's his name? Aang calls Katara Sifu, which is actually Cantonese for master. And yeah, and so I found that interesting. So they just kind of took all these Chinese elements, but they didn't. They decided not to go with the
With a what? Hello? Hello? Sorry. Sorry, could you repeat that? I cut out for a second.
I said it sounds more like waifu.
Yes. You don't call me Seafood Katara. But
Well, she's water, so she's Sifu.
oh yeah, she's your Sifu.
Oh my god!
I love. There was this great article about how they talked about how one of the reasons Avatar is good is because it doesn't have any whiteness in it, and it's one of those mask off moments where they're basically saying it doesn't have whiteness because it just doesn't have white people in it. I'm like, well, it doesn't have black people in it either. It has fictional.
This is just a bunch of characters who are in the same region.
It's based on, Earth Nation it has a variety of people because you got
Earth Nation's very obviously based on
China, but it's also quite diverse because you do have like the Guru, who's obviously Indian, and you could almost kind of look at it like it's flipped because the Fire Nation is Japan, but it's on the west side instead of east of China.
I was actually trying to figure out if the Fire Nation was North Korea or China.
It's Japan. It's based. Well, yeah. It's
political. Japan.
It's political. Its politics are Japanese. Its architecture is actually largely based on kind of ancient and classical Thailand and stuff in Siam.
Okay.
And
I can see that.
But its landscape is actually based off of Iceland, of this, because they've got like the black sand beaches, they've got this kind of lichen fields, because like in the commentary they talk about how they've gone on writers retreats, and like one of them they went on vacation in Iceland, and it's like Iceland is a huge volcanic island, and so is the Fire Nation, so it's kind of like it's less like Japan, and it's more of the geography of Iceland if it was larger and shifted down several hundred miles. And the water tribe, of course, is very based on Inuit culture.
Right, yeah.
The only thing
they kind of look Indian. I always thought they looked kind of Indian.
Oh,
Indian as in from India, or Indian as in
from India.
Okay.
The Earth's now that I think about it, like Ba Sing Se, and the Earth's fashion dress kind of reminds me of like Vietnam or something. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Well, what's interesting is the Earth King himself is based off of Emperor Puyi, who is the last emperor of China of the Qing, and because that guy also because his style of dress is very much based off of the Manchu Qing dynasty, and but his face and the fact that he's wearing glasses, he very much looks like Puyi, who is also the emperor of Manchukuo in the 1930s. But yeah, what?
Just the Earth King brings us one of the greatest moments in the entire show. The Earth King's bear.
Yes,
I mean, like
Bosco.
You mean like a badger bear or like
a gopher bear? No, just bear. This place is weird. I love that. But yeah, everything in Ba Sing Se, just like that's my favorite arc of the show, is just because like comparing it to Star Wars, it's like everything, all the characters kind of, everything is kind of linked up to that location, kind of like Cloud City is in Avatar. And again, it's very, very similar in terms of like when Aang training with the Guru is like Luke training with Yoda, and like he has the vision of his friends are in danger, both in both Star Wars and Avatar, and like they can't complete their training, and it ultimately almost kills them.
Right.
You have and you have the fact that it's kind of the dark. It's like everything that could possibly go wrong does go wrong, and that's kind of why I love that episode when they finally meet the Earth King, and it's like finally everything's gonna be okay. You know, Suki's here and the Kyoshi Warriors, and then it's just like you hear, oh no, the Dai Li are still loyal to Clancy Brown, who is the voice of Mr.
No.
The head of the Dai Li is the voice of Mr. Krabs, which is great.
Oh man, I love this. I love intersecting universes.
And then I what else? Yeah, just everything kind of goes wrong. The Earth Kingdom falls, and it kind of makes that point of, well, since the invasion failed, we'll just wait until after the comet happens, because really they can't do anything else.
Right.
Until we learn. No, because the animation in the show is still absolutely gorgeous. Like, it's better than a lot of animes I've seen. That's smooth enough, and it just everything is deliberate and beautiful.
Probably just had a much bigger budget, I'd imagine.
Yeah, but the thing is, what does not hold up is when they have to do 3D animation, because this was also around the time of Jimmy Neutron, and I maintain Jimmy Neutron is one of the ugliest shows ever made.
Yeah.
I hate it. Yes. I hate that show so much.
No, you're right.
But
yeah, I agree.
But like, because like when Aang has to bend the air into the door in the air temple, it does not look good. It's only at the very end when they probably had more of a budget and they could make the Zeppelins look okay. But outside of that, like, no. Just the 2D anime, like, just like the whole scene of when you have what they call him Koizilla, when Aang kind of merges with the ocean spirit after Zhao kills the moon. I love that sequence, and it's just everything else is black and white, and it's just this vibrant blue. And it feels very earned because of just how almost unstoppable the Fire Nation seems, but then you just have this where Aang just wipes them all out.
Hey, Fritz.
Yeah?
My girlfriend turned into the moon.
That's rough, buddy.
I love that line.
That's rough, buddy.
That's rough, man.
And then, like, when Sokka's high on the cactus juice, is like, why don't we just ask the moon? She doesn't have to worry about nothing. She flies by herself. Oh, Princess. I cried all the time when that was on when I was a kid, but I cried at a different time. I didn't cry this time. I cried 5 years ago, and it's when the saddest episode is Appa's Lost Days, when Appa's missing, and just because it's like you realize all of Aang's worries about what could be happening to Appa is completely justified because he goes through so much horrible shit. Like, he's trapped in a horrible Fire Nation circus. He's like horribly like bloodied and injured, and like when Aang's just like sleeping and he's like says in his sleep like, we'll always be together, buddy. I was like, oh, that teared me up.
Appa with Argent is scary.
Is what?
Yeah, no, so when Aang lost Appa, that one episode in the desert, I actually it's interesting because I guess I'm looking at it from like just like mental health perspective. It's interesting when Aang gets into those what are they? The avatar states, kind of when he's angry. It's kind of like being in a manic state, where you're like you kind of lose sense of all reality, and you're on an absolute rampage. And it was just interesting to see that done on film in that way. And Katara is the only one who can really soothe him. But even then, like, Sheik, and this is just like an emphasis. This just supports like how much of a strong and like not annoying character Katara is. Katara is goes. Everyone's running from Aang except Katara. Katara is the one who.
And she's calmly walks up to him and holds his
Yeah,
hand to
she
calm him
doesn't
down.
even like. Yeah, she goes up to Aang and who's just probably gonna wreak absolute havoc. But she doesn't care. She's like not afraid. Well, no, I don't know. She's probably deathly afraid, but she does it anyway because she knows Aang needs her there, and that's just that just solidified on like best girl for me. I don't know.
I was
I
figured
don't think the pairing really makes that much sense, to be honest. But I guess I kind of liked it. I don't really like Aang though, so
I love Aang.
I think Aang is a good protagonist. I don't know.
He's an interesting take on the. He's basically he's what later shows would overcorrect on in terms of he's not your traditionally, I guess, masculine quote unquote shonen protagonist, but like he's a gentle soul. It's not because he's feminine. It kind of, but it's because he's a monk. He's a simple Buddhist monk, but like. They take it way too far in stuff like Steven Universe, where the main character is just this fat, like, dumb idiot who's raised by lesbians. God, Steven Universe is so awful.
I've never seen it, or
It's-
Big Mouth, or like any of this stuff.
Yeah, I saw.
This is disgusting.
Well, it's that meme of like anime. Let's try and make our characters look super cute and pretty. Western animation. Let's make our characters look as ugly as physically possible.
I think I've only seen 2 episodes of Rick and Morty, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm not into nihilism.
Rick and Morty is Rick and Morty is a well-made show. It's well written. It's very well written. That's the problem, though. It's well written to the point where nihilism becomes a good thing, and that's not good.
Also,
Yeah.
the fan base is just like really cringy.
That's the problem that happens with all of these shows, because Avatar almost kind of started it, where it was when animated series could become cool again, or like you could be an adult and enjoy it on a like without kind of shame and like because I remember there was like in the episode where they confront the guy who killed Katara's mom, which is a really dark episode because
that was so dark.
She doesn't end up forgiving him, even though she doesn't kill him, and the only reason is because she just pities him too much because he's just this kind of pathetic old man that lives with his mother, and that like just that he's more pathetic than he's too pathetic to kill, and that's the only thing that saves his life.
I thought that was a really dark episode. I thought that was that episode and the episode where Katara learns bloodbending. Those were pretty dark episodes for a kids show, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting to see Katara in this state because she like feels she's normally so like sweet and sympathetic and like and sensitive and everything.
Mm-hmm.
But
go ahead.
Yeah.
But
She loses all rationality. Like, not that she was like super logical in the first place. Like, I think her brother Sokka had was a little more grounded in certain areas. But she just loses. She just doesn't care. This is the one time we actually do not see like any empathy or sympathy for any from Katara in any way.
There's also the show is pretty tame, but I do like quote unquote how they basically imply Sokka was planning on having sex with Suki. Because and he's got the rose in his mouth. He's like, "Hey," and like Suki's like, "I want to get into his tent," and it's like, are they implying that?
I thought I actually didn't think of that. I actually thought it was just I thought it was just a romantic hangout. But yeah, what you're saying makes sense.
Well, they are teenagers with no supervision, so
This is true.
I really like Suki and Sokka together. Suki is a good character.
I don't like Suki.
Why?
I just find her really boring.
She's not in enough episodes, but like
that's fair. She really isn't.
But it's like, she's like a perfect kind of match for Sokka in that they're both non-benders, but they're both good at fighting themselves and are fairly intelligent.
It's good. Yeah, I do like that
Like
pairing.
I thought she was a third wheel that got in the way of Sokka and Toph.
I don't know. I just can't see Toph in any romantic sense with anybody in the time of the show because she's too young.
I can't see Toph with anyone, honestly. That's why. Yeah,
Well,
I agree.
Outside of like when she's like she in the Serpent's Past when she thinks Sokka saved her is the one that saved her, and then like when she finds that it's Suki, she's like, "Oh, you can let me drown now." Which now people would say that's homophobic because she's basically saying she'd rather kill herself than accept that she's gay.
I didn't even think of it like that. I
No, you're not supposed to. It's a
I
joke.
thought she was like, I want to die now because I've professed my love for someone.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
That's
but
how I thought of that.
isn't Toph having a crush on Sokka brought up a couple times?
It is, but I don't think it's beyond just the fact that, well, Sokka looks like the Giga Chad, but... Well, no, his dad looks like the Giga Chad.
Well,
I think it's just like... a crush that what is how old is Toph?
12.
Like
she's 12.
Okay, she's 12, and Sokka's like 15 or 16.
I think he's 14.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't know. Like, I feel like it's like an older guy crush. Like, oh, he's really cute. Oh no, senpai noticed.
She technically can't see him, but
is it gonna be like is it like Daredevil where he can see what they look like in the rain?
maybe, I don't know.
But
it would be really hard to write a blind character.
Well, they do it well. One mistake I noticed this is in the episode when she's training Aang, because I have a whole art book on Avatar, which is really good, and I also have this really cool thing where it's a bunch of posters, but like in the episode when she's training Aang in earthbending, when they're basically doing like that kind of tug of war, they're pushing against each other, and she has the rock suit. They made a huge mistake in which they made a kind of slit for her eyes, even though why would they? Because she can't see.
Just to breathe, maybe.
No, they didn't put it over her mouth, but that's one of my favorite bending things is whenever people make suits out of metal or rock, like in the season 2 finale when Aang makes that kind of crystal suit. I really wish they held on that longer because it looked really, really cool.
Lol.
What?
Yeah. No. Yeah, you're right. Sorry.
But yeah, what else? Because we're almost at 2 hours. I think 2 hours sounds good. What else we could talk about is, what else do I have in my notes here is, favorite episodes then. I mean, we've kind of talked about that already. For me, it's the Blind Bandit and then the Avatar and the Fire Lord. Argent?
I think it's probably the recap episode and the I think whatever it is, the one where the beach episode, I think is.
It's called The Beach. It's funny is a lot of the episode titles make it sound like it's Seinfeld, where in Seinfeld every episode is titled with the something. It's like and like in Avatar they do that a lot too, where they have there's the Footloose episode where when Aang is at the Fire Nation school.
I think The Beach is my favorite episode.
Mm-hmm. Just because you also have Sparky Boom Man.
It's not even for like the fan service, but I kind of like the slice of life with like the Fire Nation. Because they're like, you always see them in just extremely intense life or death situations, and it's funny to watch Azula try to act like a normal person.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny that Ty Lee seems like the only one that's kind of capable of doing that, of acting like a normal teenager at that time. And then like when Zuko like gives May a shell, he's like, what do I want this for? I don't know. I thought it was pretty, and I thought you like it. Girls like that. Yeah, stupid girls.
That's always great.
But apparently they break up in the comics, which is so stupid. Because at the end of season, at the finale, where I did love this as Nostalgia Critic, when him and his brother were kind of talking about the series finale. They're kind of comparing it to the end of Lord of the Rings, where Iroh probably goes to the kids. He's like, "My friends, you bow to no one." But what was But what's kind of funny about the beginning of season 3, outside of Aang having hair, is that the characters' positions are completely flipped in the sense that throughout the first 2 seasons, like Aang, outside of being in the Fire Nation, Aang and his friends are not upset about they don't have to hide the fact that I'm the Avatar. It's kind of, they have to do this, say, like, I'm the Avatar, it's my duty to help people, how can I help this village, which is most of what season 1 is. But in season 2, it's, they're in the Earth Kingdom. Season 3, now they're in the Fire Nation and nobody can know who Aang is. And Zuko, on the other hand, everybody loves him now, and so they're completely flipped, and it's a little on the nose when Aang is basically at the end of that episode. It's like, I need my honor back, where now he's Zuko, and he even has this big scar on his back and the bottom of his foot where Azula shot him. It's kind of scarring him now. But yeah, is there anything else? Any final thoughts on the show? Or
Nope, I think I covered pretty much everything I wanted to.
Korra sucks. Don't watch it.
Yes, that's basically a too long didn't read. Korra sucks.
We Buddy Smith in the chat. We already talked about Korra's many failings. Somebody did give me a super chat though. I'll just want to read them off. Want to read that off briefly. Thank you very much, Darth Kilhoon. What if they used Eastern ethics? What would have happened? And I think that's just one last thing is the ending, right, where they kind of construct this way for Aang to defeat Ozai without killing him. Because I understand why they couldn't do that. Because same thing for why Katara and Zuko couldn't didn't end up together in the show. Because imagine the emotional toll both that and having to kill Ozai would have on little Aang. Like, he would be a devastated and broken individual. And you don't really want that to happen to him.
Right, yeah.
What is funny is that, like, I remember what I was going to say is, in the episode The Southern Raiders, somebody said season 3 is okay, but the overall series is very bad. You better be talking about Korra, not... And I hate season 3 too, because it's so stupid and everything is contrived. But, when they were showing kind of previews for the second half of season 3, they showed a moment in that episode where after Katara doesn't kill the guy that killed her mom, she embraces Zuko because they got closure, and it showed, like, them showing that to all the fans that moment, and everybody went ballistic. And it's like, yeah, everybody loves that shipping, and so I imagine a lot of people were mad that Aang and Katara got together, but I think thematically it all works out. I agree with that.
Also, I feel like, I mean, yeah, having, like what you said before, having the emotional toll of saving the world and defeating Fire Lord Ozai on top of everything would have been just too much for Aang. I mean,
I think it also go ahead.
And like I am also Zuto. Oh, that was okay. Never mind. But yeah, I just like this is a kids show. And I can see why they did a lot of things. But the ending is very Eastern. I think in a way.
I think it's just more of a general hero's journey of everything is kind of wrapped up. To me, it's very much Lord of the Rings, where you kind of have this understanding of all the characters essentially have closure on everything that's happened to them. Aang, Sokka, and Zuko all have they all got their nice girlfriend in the end. Everybody seems pretty happy. But like the other thing is that the only problem is that the Lion Turtle's a little contrived. They had built it up a little more, because it's similar to what Iroh says, where Zuko says, Iroh, you'll take the throne after my father's defeated. And he's like, no, because politically, essentially, that would just be like, oh, a brother killing his other brother to take power. It has to be a new generation. It has to be you that takes the throne, Zuko. And it's the same thing where if Avatar killed Iroh, that would completely backfire, because now everybody in the Fire Nation has even more of a reason to absolutely despise him, as opposed to the Avatar was able to show restraint and not kill Ozai. But yeah, I think it ends pretty well.
I
Toph,
mean,
go ahead.
oh, like, cause I was thinking about it, and like if this was like in a traditional like trad cat, like in the old times, like there would have been nothing wrong with like, cause Fire Lord Ozai has done like grievous like crimes, and he's basically screwed up the world. There would have actually just been like there wouldn't have been anything wrong
With
with Aang actually putting him to like death for because like according to like traditional Catholic belief. Like I'm thinking of the death penalty here, but I think the ending worked out well, honestly, because like, and I was thinking about it for a while, and one of the things that came up with the Turtle Lion episode is that like you don't want to repeat, like he doesn't want to repeat the cycle, and Aang knows this, and he like being a monk, like being a monk in itself is very peaceful, and he's inner peace and peace for everyone. So the way he goes about it actually fits him and fits what is best in that current situation, I think.
And yeah, because to end, the last last line you hear of dialogue is from Toph, and she says it's perfect. She's describing Sokka wanted to make a portrait of everybody, and of course it looks terrible. Because it's it's funny. I love whenever because some of the humor, just like Toph's blind jokes, when it's like we're gonna put up posters of opera, and she's like, I can do this by myself, and she puts it on backwards. He's like, it's upside down, isn't it? Or but yeah, I don't want to get too much else into it. If anybody's got any other thoughts, I think this was a very good conversation.
Oh yeah, this is great. Thanks, Fritz.
Yeah, it was great. So yeah, you can find Argent on his own YouTube channel, and you can find Kami on Twitter at her Twitter, yeah, at Paper Kaisen.
Let me type. I'll type it out, guys.
Yeah, I also put it in the description of the video, so you can.
Oh,
watch it
okay,
there.
okay.
But yeah, she's a good Catholic artist, so if you want to go check out her stuff there, yeah. So thanks everybody. Have a good night.
Thanks for having us, Fritz.